Ghostly tales, yet mirrors of human life. Hey everyone! Welcome to Encountering Chinese, Ghostly Tales from Zhai. Today, I'm going to tell you a story called Shao. In the prefecture of Taiping, there was a man named Zhai. His wife, Jean, had not borne any children since marrying into the Zhai family and was known for being extremely jealous. Later, Zhai bought a concubine for 100 taels of silver, but Jean cruelly mistreated the concubine, and within a year, the concubine died. Zhai was furious about this and moved to live alone in his study for several months, refusing to enter Jin's room. One day, on Zhai's birthday, Jin came to him, continuously apologizing and offering her sincere regrets. She respectfully bowed to him and offered her birthday greetings. Zhai, seeing her speaking so softly and humbly, couldn't bring himself to refuse her, and the two reconciled. Jean then prepared a banquet in their bedroom and invited her husband to join her for a meal. Not long after, Zhai said he was drunk and returned to his study. Jean dressed herself up beautifully and personally went to his study, saying to him, "I've waited for you all day with genuine sincerity. Even if you're drunk, please drink one more cup for my sake." Zhai entered the inner room and continued drinking and chatting with Jean. She calmly said, "Some time ago, I mistakenly caused the death of your concubine, and now, in hindsight, I deeply regret it. You've held a grudge against me because of it, but does our relationship as husband and wife mean nothing to you? From now on, even if you find 12 concubines, I promise not to do anything outrageous again." Hearing this, Zhai was even more pleased, and as the candle was about to burn out, he invited Jean to stay in the inner room, and they slept together. From that point on, the couple's love and respect for each other returned to how it had been. Jean even called a matchmaker to help her husband find beautiful women, though secretly, she instructed the matchmaker to delay matters, and even if she did find someone suitable, not to inform her husband. In the meantime, Jean pretended to be anxious, urging the matchmaker to hurry. After more than a year, Zhai grew impatient and began asking friends and relatives to help him find a concubine. Eventually, they found the adopted daughter of the Lin family from the same city. When Jean saw the Lin family girl, she pretended to be very fond of her. After Lin entered the household, she and Jean ate and drank together, and Jean even allowed Lin to use her makeup and jewelry as she pleased. However, Lin, who was raised in the harsh northern region of Yan, only knew how to make embroidered shoes and couldn't do other needlework. Because of this, all the other sewing tasks had to be handed over to others. When Jean saw this, she said to Lin, "Our family is thrifty and not as wealthy as those of princes or dukes. A woman bought into the household can't just be here for decoration." So, Jean brought out some silk and taught Lin how to make clothes, treating her like a strict teacher instructing a disciple. At first, Jean only scolded and reprimanded Lin, but before long, she started whipping her. Zhai saw this and felt heartbroken, but he couldn't think of a way to rescue Lin. Yet, Jean outwardly showed even more affection for Lin, often helping her with her makeup and grooming, applying rouge and powder herself. However, if Lin's shoes had even a slight crease, Jean would beat her feet with an iron rod. If Lin's hair wasn't neatly combed, she would slap her. Over time, Lin couldn't endure the abuse any longer and hanged herself. Zhai Tingbin was devastated and deeply resented Jean. Jean, however, lashed back angrily, saying, "I was disciplining the concubine for you. That is the wife's duty. What wrong did I commit?" At that moment, Zhai Tingbin finally saw through Jin's treachery, and once again, the couple broke off their relationship, ceasing any further interactions. In secret, Zhai Tingbin had his study remodeled and planned to buy another beautiful concubine to live there with him. Half a year passed, and Zhai Tingbin still hadn't found a suitable woman. One day, while attending a friend's funeral, he happened to notice a young lady around 16 or 17 years old. She was strikingly beautiful, and he couldn't take his eyes off her, staring intently in a daze. The young lady noticed his blank stare and, feeling puzzled, glanced at him sideways. Zhai Tingbin inquired about her and learned that her surname was Shao. Her father was a poor scholar, and she was their only daughter. Shao had been remarkably intelligent since childhood. Whatever she was taught, she could remember after just one reading. She particularly enjoyed studying medical texts and books on physiognomy. Her father adored her and allowed her to make her own decisions when suitors came to propose, but so far, she had refused both wealthy young men and poor ones alike. At 17, she still hadn't settled on a husband. After learning all this, Zhai Tingbin realized it would likely be impossible for him to win over this young lady, but he couldn't stop thinking about her. He thought that since the Shao family was poor, perhaps money could sway her. Zhai Tingbin contacted several matchmakers to discuss the matter with the Shao family, but none dared to approach them. Discouraged, Zhai gave up hope of pursuing her. One day, a matchmaker named Zhai came to visit Zhai Tingbin, intending to sell him some pearls. Zhai took the opportunity to share his desire to marry Shao. He gave matchmaker Zhai a large sum of money and said, "I only ask that you convey my sincerity to her family. Whether this works out or not, I won't hold it against you. But if there's even the slightest hope, I'd be willing to spend any amount of money, even 1,000 taels of silver." Tempted by the money, Zhai eagerly agreed to help. Matchmaker Zhai went to the Shao family's home and, on purpose, engaged Shao's mother in idle chatter. When she saw Shao, she feigned surprise and praised. "What a beautiful young lady! If she were chosen to enter the royal palace, beauties like Zhao Fian would pale in comparison." She then asked, "Has such a lovely girl been betrothed yet?" Shao's mother replied, "My daughter has not been matched yet." Matchmaker Zhai said, "With such beauty, why worry about not finding a noble husband like a prince or duke?" Shao's mother sighed and said, "We don't dare hope for a match with royalty. As long as he's a fine scholar, we'd be satisfied. But my stubborn daughter keeps rejecting every suitor. We've had 10 proposals, and she hasn't accepted a single one. I don't know what's on her mind. Matchmaker Zhai replied. Madam, there's no need to worry. With such a beautiful daughter, who knows which fortunate gentleman will be blessed to marry her in the future? Yesterday, something amusing happened. The gentleman from the Zhai family nearby told me that he once saw your daughter near a graveyard and was willing to offer 1,000 taels of silver as a bride price. Isn't that just a starved toad wishing to eat swan meat? I scolded him thoroughly for this, and he dared not say another word. Shao's mother smiled but didn't respond. Matchmaker Zhai continued. It's because your family values scholarship over wealth. If it were another family, they'd definitely consider such a large sum, even if the suitor weren't a scholar. Shao's mother just smiled again, without saying anything. Then, Matchmaker Zhai, turning her eyes mischievously, clapped her hands and said, If this match were successful, it wouldn't benefit an old lady like me at all. Now, madam, you're treating me so kindly, chatting with me as soon as I came in and even pouring me tea. But if, in the future, you receive 1,000 tael bride price, riding horses, wearing fine clothes, and living in a grand house, I bet even the gatekeeper would scold me for not knowing my place. Upon hearing this, Shao's mother thought for a while and then got up to talk to her husband inside the house. After some time, the couple called Shao in to discuss the matter. Eventually, all three of them came out together. Shao's mother, smiling, said to Matchmaker Zhai, This girl is truly strange. She's rejected so many excellent suitors, yet she's willing to be someone's concubine. But doing so might invite ridicule from scholars. Matchmaker Zhai responded. If your daughter gives birth to a son after entering the household, even the wife wouldn't dare mistreat her, no matter how upset she is. She then told Shao's parents about how Zhai Tingbin and his wife were no longer living together, which made Shao's mother even happier. She called her daughter over and said, You can discuss it with Auntie Zhai yourself. This is your decision. Don't regret it later or blame us. Shao, shyly, replied, As long as you, my parents, can live peacefully and happily in your later years, I won't have let you down. Besides, I am destined for a humble life. If I were to marry into a noble family as a wife, it would surely shorten my lifespan. Being a concubine may be difficult, but perhaps it's a different kind of blessing. I've met Mr. Zhai before. He has a face full of good fortune, and I'm sure his descendants will be prosperous. Hearing this, Matchmaker Zhai was thrilled, realizing the success of her mission. She hurried back, eager to report the news to Zhai Tingbin. When Zhai Tingbin received the news, he was overjoyed. He immediately prepared 1,000 taels, hitched up his carriage, and brought Shao to his study. The servants dared not inform Jean of this. Shao said to Zhai Tingbin, Your plan is like a swallow building its nest on a curtain. Have you really not thought about the day it might fall? You're keeping everyone silent, hoping the matter won't be exposed, but is that possible? It would be better if you took me home earlier and came clean about the situation. Things might turn out better that way. Zhai Tingbin, afraid that Shao would be mistreated, was hesitant. Shao replied, There are no people who are entirely unreasonable in this world. As long as I am careful and avoid making mistakes, how could she find a reason to mistreat me? Chai Tingbin responded. It's not as simple as you say. My wife is extremely fierce. Reason and emotion won't move her. Shao said. I am only a humble concubine, and some suffering is to be expected. Otherwise, how can this situation last long as it is now? Chai Tingbin felt that she was right but still couldn't make up his mind, lacking the courage to return home. One day, while Chai Tingbin was away on business, Shao changed into a maid's plain blue clothes and left the house. She rode an old horse, followed by an elderly servant woman carrying her belongings, and made her way to Jin's residence. Upon seeing Jin, Shao knelt on the ground and explained the entire situation. At first, Jin was furious, but then she began to soften, thinking that Shao had come on her own and could be forgiven. Seeing her dressed humbly and behaving with such respect, Jin's anger gradually eased. She then ordered a maid to bring silken clothes for Shao to wear and said to her, It's that heartless, ungrateful man who has spoken ill of me to others, ruining my reputation. The fault is entirely his. As for the previous concubines, their improper behavior provoked my anger. Think about it. What kind of man secretly sets up another household behind his wife's back? Does that still make him a man? Shao responded. From what I've observed, he does seem to regret his actions, but he is too proud to humble himself and apologize to you. As the saying goes, those who are in authority don't bow to those below them. According to propriety, a wife should treat her husband as a son treats his father, and a concubine should treat the wife as a daughter treats her mother. If you could be more understanding and compassionate toward him, I believe the accumulated resentment could quickly dissipate. Jin said, But if he doesn't come himself, what can I do? Afterward, she instructed the maids and servants to prepare a room for Shao. Although she was still unhappy in her heart, for the moment, she refrained from getting angry. When Chai Tingbin heard that Shao had returned home, he was both shocked and worried. He thought to himself that Shao, like a lamb entering a den of tigers, had probably already been cruelly mistreated by his wife. He hurried home, but upon arriving, found the house peaceful and quiet, which slightly eased his mind. Shao came out to greet him and even urged him to go to Jin's room. However, Chai Tingbin showed reluctance until Shao began to cry, and only then did he agree to see his wife. Shao then went to see Jin, saying, The master has just returned but feels too ashamed to see you. Could you please go to him and speak kindly? Jin refused, so Shao said, I've already explained, a husband is to his wife as a wife is to a concubine. Husband and wife are the closest of people, and even saying words of appeasement wouldn't be considered flattery. Do you know why? It's because these are the things a married couple should naturally do. Hearing this, Jin followed Shao's suggestion and went to see Chai Tingbin. She said to him, Well, it seems you've prepared yourself 3 burrows like a clever rabbit, so why did you even bother coming back? Chai Tingbin kept his head down and said nothing. Shao nudged him with her elbow, prompting Chai Tingbin to force a smile. Jin's expression softened, and as she was about to return to her inner chamber, Shao pushed Chai Tingbin to follow her inside. She then instructed the cook to prepare food and wine for the couple. From that point on, the two reconciled. Every morning, Shao would dress in a maid's attire to greet Jin and Chai Tingbin, serving them while they washed and got ready, treating them with the utmost respect, just as a servant would. Whenever Chai Tingbin tried to enter Shao's room, she would repeatedly urge him to leave, allowing him to stay only once after 10 days had passed. Jin also thought Shao was very virtuous, but she gradually started feeling jealous, realizing that in every aspect, she couldn't compare to Shao. Despite this, since Shao served her so attentively, she couldn't find any fault with her. Occasionally, she would scold her, but Shao always accepted it patiently and without complaint. One night, Jin and Chai Tingbin quarreled over a trivial matter, and the next morning, while they were getting ready, their anger had not subsided. Shao was holding a mirror for Jin, but accidentally dropped it, shattering it on the ground. Seeing this, Jin became even more enraged. Her hair was half-combed, and her eyes bulged with fury. Shao, terrified, knelt down immediately, pleading for Jin's forgiveness. However, Jin's anger did not dissipate, and she whipped Shao dozens of times. Chai Tingbin could no longer stand it and stormed into the room, pulling Shao away, with Jin angrily chasing after them. In a fit of rage, Chai Tingbin snatched the whip and struck Jin with it, leaving welts and bruises on her face and body before she retreated. From that moment, the couple became like enemies. Chai Tingbin told Shao not to go to Jin's room anymore, but Shao refused to listen. Every morning, she would crawl on her knees to Jin's bedroom and wait outside. Jin, furious, pounded on her bed and cursed, forbidding Shao from coming near. Jin was seething with hatred, planning to vent her anger on Shao once Chai Tingbin left the house. Sensing Jin's intentions, Chai Tingbin cancelled all his plans and stayed home behind closed doors. Jin, having no other outlet, resorted to whipping the other maids and servants daily to release her fury, making life unbearable for the household staff. Since the couple's fallout, Shao was too afraid to stay with Chai Tingbin, so he had to sleep alone. Only when Jin found this out did she finally calm down a bit. One day, a slightly older and rather cunning maid happened to speak with Chai Tingbin, which made Jin suspicious that the maid was having an affair with him. As a result, Jin beat the maid especially harshly. The maid, bitter and resentful, often cursed Jin in secret. One evening, it was this maid's turn to attend to Jin as she slept. Shao advised Chai Tingbin not to let the maid serve, saying, "I see a murderous intent on her face. She will certainly do something bad." Chai Tingbin, heeding Shao's warning, called the maid over and asked her, "What are you planning to do?" The maid, terrified, couldn't respond, which only deepened Chai Tingbin's suspicion. Upon searching her, he found a sharp knife. With no explanation to offer, the maid fell to the ground, begging for death. Chai Tingbin was about to beat her when Shao intervened, saying, "If you do that, the lady will hear, and then this maid will surely be killed." Although her crime is unforgivable, it would be better to sell her off. This way, her life is spared, and we can even recover some money. Zhai Tingbin agreed with this reasoning. As it happened, someone was looking to buy a concubine, so he quickly sold the maid. However, Jean became angry with Zhai Tingbin for not consulting her first, and she directed even more of her anger towards Shao, scolding her even more fiercely. Furious, Zhai Tingbin glared at Shao and said, "This is all your own doing. If that maid had killed her earlier, things wouldn't have come to this." After saying that, he turned and left. Jean found his words strange, but no one around her knew what had happened. She then went to ask Shao, but Shao also kept silent. Jean, feeling frustrated and furious, stomped her feet and cursed in anger. At that moment, Zhai Tingbin returned and told her the truth about the situation. Jean was utterly shocked and, from that point on, spoke to Shao in a much softer tone. However, deep inside, she resented Shao for not telling her the truth sooner. Believing that the previous grudges had been resolved, Zhai Tingbin let down his guard. Once, when Zhai Tingbin had to travel far for business, Jean summoned Shao and scolded her. A maid daring to kill her master is certainly a crime that cannot be forgiven, yet you let her go. What were your intentions? Shao, caught off guard, couldn't find the right words to respond. Jean then took a red-hot iron and branded Shao's face, intending to ruin her looks. The maids and servants in the house all felt deeply unjust for Shao. Every time Shao cried out in pain, the servants cried along with her, even offering to take her place and die in her stead. Eventually, Jean stopped branding her, but then used needles to stab her under the ribs. After stabbing her more than 20 times, she finally waved her off. When Zhai Tingbin returned and saw the burn marks on Shao's face, he was furious and wanted to confront Jean. Shao, however, tugged at his sleeve and said, "I clearly knew that your home was a pit of fire, yet I still willingly jumped in. Do you know why? I once read my own fortune and knew that my fate was ill. I'm destined to suffer, and this is heaven's punishment. As long as I can endure these trials, perhaps better days await me. If I don't accept these hardships, it would be like filling a pit halfway and then digging it up again, making all the suffering I've endured so far meaningless." After speaking, she applied medicine to her wounds, and after a few days, they miraculously healed. One day, as Shao was looking in the mirror, she suddenly said joyfully, "Husband, today you should congratulate me. Your wife has burned away the line on my face that foretold misfortune." From then on, Shao continued as before, respectfully serving Jean morning and night. That day, when Jean saw that everyone cried with Shao during the branding, she realized that she had lost the support of the household and began to feel a little remorseful. She often called Shao to work with her, and her words and behavior became much kinder. After more than a month, Jean suddenly developed an illness that caused indigestion, and she couldn't eat anything. Zhai Tingbin wished she would die sooner, so he didn't bother to visit or care for her. A few days later, Jin's stomach became bloated like a drum, and she couldn't sleep day or night. Only Shao looked after her diligently, even neglecting her own meals and rest, which touched Jean deeply. Shao also shared some methods to treat her illness. Although Jean felt she had been too cruel and harsh to Shao in the past, she remained suspicious that Shao might seek revenge, so she refused Shao's offer to treat her. In fact, despite Jin's usual strictness, she was skilled at managing the household, and the maids and servants obeyed her. However, since she became ill, they had grown lazy and neglectful in their work. Zhai Tingbin had to manage the household affairs himself, which was exhausting, and rice and salt were frequently stolen by the servants. Gradually, he began to understand the difficulty of running a household, so he invited the best doctors from the city to treat Jean. Jean often told the doctors that she was suffering from qi gu, so when they checked her pulse, they all assumed that her illness was due to blocked qi. Yet, after several doctors, her condition did not improve, and her life was in danger. One day, while boiling medicine, Shao said to Jean again, "Even if you take 100 doses of this medicine, it won't help, it will only worsen your condition." Jean didn't believe her, so Shao secretly swapped the prescription for another. After Jean took the new medicine, she had diarrhea 3 times within the span of one meal, and by the end of the day, her condition had improved. Jean, still skeptical of Shao's words, pretended to groan and mockingly called out to her, "Oh, female Hua Tuo. Look, I've gotten better after taking the medicine." Shao and the maids all burst into laughter. When Jean asked why they were laughing, Shao truthfully explained what had happened. Jean, moved to tears, said, "Today, I owe you such a great favor, yet I was mocking you. From now on, you will be in charge of everything in this household." Not long after, Jin's illness was completely cured, and Zhai Tingbin held a banquet to celebrate her recovery. Shao stood beside her, serving with a wine jug in hand. Jean stood up, took the jug from Shao, pulled her to sit together, and the two became unusually close. As the night wore on, Shao made an excuse to leave the gathering, but Jean had 2 maids pull her back, insisting that Shao stay and sleep with her. From then on, the two discussed matters together and dined at the same table, closer than actual sisters. Not long after, Shao gave birth to a baby boy. After childbirth, Shao frequently fell ill, and Jean personally took care of her, nursing her as if she were her own mother. Later, Jean developed a severe pain in her chest that turned her face blue with agony, making her feel as though she couldn't go on living. Shao hurried to buy silver needles to treat her. When Shao returned, Jean was on the verge of passing out. Shao quickly administered acupuncture at the specific points, finally relieving Jin's pain. However, after 10 days, Jean fell ill again, and although Shao treated her with acupuncture, Jin's illness would recur every 6 or 7 days. Though Shao's medical skills were remarkable and prevented Jean from experiencing extreme pain, Jean constantly lived in fear of the illness returning. One night, Jean dreamt of arriving at what seemed to be a temple where the statues of gods and ghosts moved. A great deity asked, "Are you Jean? You have committed many sins in life, and your lifespan is coming to an end. However, since you repented, you have been given this current affliction as a form of punishment. In the past, you killed 2 concubines, but that was because of the karma from their previous lives, so their fate was deserved. As for Shao, she has done no wrong, but you mistreated her nonetheless. You whipped her, and your husband whipped you in return, so that matter is settled. However, you still owe her the punishment of branding and 23 needles. So far, she has only applied 3 needles to you, which is why your illness cannot be cured. Tomorrow, you will fall ill again. Jean woke up in terror but held on to a small hope that the nightmare wouldn't come true. Yet, after finishing her meal, she indeed fell ill again, this time with even greater pain. Shao came and, with a single needle, relieved the pain once more. Confused, Shao remarked, "My skills are limited. Why is it that I can't fully cure your illness? It seems I'll need to use moxibustion. This illness must be burned out, but I worry you won't be able to endure it." Jean suddenly recalled the words of the deity in her dream and did not refuse the treatment. As Jean groaned and endured the pain of the moxibustion, she thought to herself, "I still owe Shao 19 needles. I wonder what illness will arise next. I might as well endure all the pain now, so I won't have to suffer more later." After the moxa was burned through, Jean requested that Shao administer more needles. Shao laughed and said, "Acupuncture can't be used casually like this." Jean replied, "There's no need to follow the points. Just do me the favor of administering 19 more needles." Shao laughed and said she couldn't do such a thing. Jean insisted, even getting out of bed to kneel and beg, but Shao still couldn't bear to do it. Finally, Jean told Shao about her dream, and only then did Shao agree to administer the 19 needles according to the correct points. From that day onward, Jin's illness was completely cured and never returned. After this experience, she repented deeply for her past behavior and no longer spoke harshly to the servants. Shao's son was named Zhai, and from a young age, he was exceptionally intelligent. Shao often remarked, "This child's appearance suggests he will become a Hanlon scholar." At the age of 8, Zhai was regarded as a child prodigy, and by 15, he passed the imperial examination and was eventually appointed to a Hanlon official position. Zhai returned to his hometown in splendid attire, and the villagers felt proud of him. On that day, Shao's father, having sold his daughter, became wealthy, but the literati felt ashamed to associate with him until this moment. At the end of the story, the author adds a commentary. He states, "Women are inherently cunning and jealous. This is simply a part of being a wife. Concubines, relying on their youth, flaunt their beauty and wit, so how can they not provoke the anger of the legitimate wife? Alas, most family calamities arise from this. If concubines could recognize their position and fulfill their duties, even if they faced setbacks, the legitimate wife would naturally find no reason to punish them." As for Jean, she only began to repent after being saved by Shao multiple times, which is quite slow-witted. Heaven did not increase her punishment as a result, which is also a form of mercy. Just look at those who, having received kindness from others, repay it with malice. They truly cannot distinguish between good and evil, right and wrong. In the past, I always doubted those foolish couples who, when ill, would not seek medical treatment but instead blindly consulted shamans, allowing themselves to be burned, whipped, or needled. I always found this perplexing, but after hearing Jin's story, I seem to understand the reasoning behind it. This also reminds me of another story. There was a man from Fujian who married a concubine. One night, he went to his wife's room but hesitated to leave immediately, pretending to be taking off his shoes to get into bed. Seeing this, the wife coldly said, "Hurry up and leave. Don't put on a show here." The husband wanted to feign hesitation, but the wife, with a serious expression, said, "I'm not the kind of person who gets jealous. Why do you need to act in such an off-putting manner?" Only then did the husband leave. However, alone in her room, the wife tossed and turned, unable to sleep, so she got up and stealthily listened outside the concubine's door. She could only vaguely hear the concubine's voice but could not make out the words, though she discerned the phrase, "langba," which is a term Fujianese people use to refer to their father. The more the wife thought about it, the angrier she became, and a loogie lodged in her throat, causing her to faint and hit her head on the door, making a loud noise. The husband, startled, got up and opened the door, only to see a dark figure collapse in front of him. He hurriedly called the concubine to bring a lamp. When she illuminated the figure, it turned out to be his wife. They quickly helped her up and gave her some water to drink. The wife then slightly opened her eyes, but her consciousness remained unclear. She moaned, "Whose langba are you calling?" This shows that even when the wife was not fully aware, her jealousy remained undiminished. In the story, it was mentioned that Chai Tingbin's wife, Lady Jean, abused the concubine, yet her husband did not cast her out. This can be understood in the context of ancient Chinese society, where the status of concubines was far lower than that of wives. While ancient China adhered to a monogamous marriage system, a man was allowed only one wife. Despite women generally having a lower societal status, the position of the wife within the household was considered equal to her husband's, and divorce was not easily permitted unless under extreme circumstances. However, men could take one or more concubines, who were often of lower birth, akin to female servants, and had no legal protection. They could be dismissed at any time. The relationship between a wife and a concubine was more like that of a master and servant. This inequality led to the saying, "Better to be a poor man's wife than a rich man's concubine." With this historical background, it becomes clearer why Chai Tingbin did not confront his wife over her abuse of the concubine. Alright. That's all for today's ghostly tale, Shao. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Please also encourage everyone to comment and share more. We'll see you in the next episode.